This is my heater. I dare you to hit it.
You'll be sorry.
You want the heater? I'll give it to you.
Basketball, maybe they don't hit it.
A swing and a drive to deep right.
Clear the deck. Cannonball coming.
Left field. It is out of here.
Welcome. Baseball Unstitched. Evan and Ryan, we're back doing our thing. Happy Tuesday morning or whenever you are listening. Evan, how is the week?
It's baseball season. If you know anything about Ryan and I, we are Commanders fans, so it is officially baseball season for both of us. A fun season nonetheless, but we're very excited for it. Spring training is a short ways away. College baseball is a short ways away, so we're into the grind now.
100%. Good run for our Commanders, and it's fun to have a good team after 30 years. But hey, like we always say, baseball podcast. If you came to listen about anything else, probably in the wrong place. Let's get that little rundown here on recent moves that you may have missed. Shinosuke Agasawara. I've been practicing this all day.
Yeah,
I had to mess it up.
I thought you were
anyways.
going to nail it.
I thought I was too. He signs with the Washington Nationals on a 2-year, $3.5 million contract coming over from the MPB, where he was a all-star. Additionally, too, if you didn't have a chance, take a look at the thread that we did on Agasawara on Twitter. Another signing here, Jurickson Profar signs with the Braves on a 3-year, $42 million deal. We know a lot of our Braves listeners were very excited to watch them make a move. I think Profar is going to really help enhance that outfield for the Braves. J.D. Davis signing with the Angels on a 1-year, $2.5 million deal. And then finally, Paul Sewald getting an opportunity here with the Cleveland Guardians on a 1-year, $7 million deal to potentially amp up what is already an excellent bullpen. Another piece here, guys, is this was Hall of Fame week, and we're going to run into that real quick.
Yeah, real quick. CC Sabathia joins the Hall of Fame on his first ballot. Billy Wagner gets in on his 10th and final. There was a huge push for Billy Wagner. He's consistently been growing his vote totals year over year. We all kind of had a feeling he was going to get in. There's a couple marks he doesn't necessarily hit as far as traditional Hall of Famers go in terms of innings pitched. But when you look at the way he was able to truly shut the door from the back of the bullpen, being the size guy he was and bringing the heat that he did, it's hard to look at it. Guys who played against him would tell you emphatically this guy was a Hall of Famer. So I think everybody was happy to see him get in. CC Sabathia, absolutely first ballot Hall of Famer. No question in my mind.
100%.
You will not see a guy do what he did for Milwaukee in half a season ever again. 17 starts, won 11-6. 11-5, pitched most of those on 3 to 4 days rest, willed that team into the playoffs for the first time in a while, and that was after he was traded to them, was not going to re-sign with them, and was getting prepped to sign a $100+ million contract, which he ended up doing with the Yankees, and ended up being the same thing for the Yankees, an absolute workhorse for years and years and years. And then finally, the one we all knew was going to go in the first ballot, the question was unanimous or not, was Ichiro. Unfortunately, somebody left him off their ballot. He fell 1 vote shy, similar to Derek Jeter, and did not join Mariano Rivera as the only unanimous entry into the Hall of Fame. A lot of people are upset by it, but to be quite honest, it's very possible it was someone who used all 10 of their votes to keep certain players on the ballot. For those of you who don't know, to stay on the ballot, you have to receive 5% of the vote or more. In order to get there, you need a certain number of votes out of the some odd 450 to 500 votes that happen, that are the people that are a part of the Baseball Writers Association. So in all, quite honestly, like, it's not shocking he didn't get in unanimously, not because everybody didn't believe he should have been, but more to the circumstances of keeping other guys on the ballot. I think I saw Adam Jones somewhere tweet that he probably took Ichiro's vote off the one ballot because he, I think, only got 1 or 2 votes to begin with. But it was a fun class to see. It's one of the best we've seen as far as the guys that did end up going in. And it was really nice to get what we got because next year's not going to be the same.
What do you mean? Chris Davis is not going in as a first ballot Hall of Famer, in your opinion?
Ryan Braun isn't just he's not walking up those steps.
Maybe not as a first ballot. Come on now. Maybe not as a first ballot. But Ryan Braun was pretty good when we were growing up. Either way.
I'll tell you what. If Ryan Braun gets in, you and I will lead the Barry Bonds mob for not being in the Hall of Fame.
Hold on, man. The Barry Bonds mob, every time anybody gets in, should already be going nuts. Just our opinion. Again, as Flax likes to say, hashtag bring back steroids.
Yep.
It's the first time I've ever said that on here. I'm regretting it already. Nonetheless, let's move ourselves over to what we're here to talk about today. And guys, we're getting close to the start of this MLB season. Spring training is just so close. Pitchers and catchers are on their way, is the reality of the situation. Top prospects everywhere are starting to go to Florida and Arizona simply to make sure that that team knows, hey, I'm ready to go and I'm here to make the team this year. Let's talk about some potential breakout rookies here in 2025. Flax, why don't you go ahead and start us off with a name that probably many people are familiar with, and there's a potential that people are going to be upset you're even talking about him.
Yeah, no, especially in my camp, this is out of the ordinary of someone I'd bring into this space. But if you watch baseball, you know it's coming. Jason Dominguez is going to be a breakout star in 2025. If you watch what he did last year between AA, AAA, coming off of a UCL surgery in 58 games, you saw what he did in 8 short games in 2023. You know for a fact this guy can absolutely pound the baseball, and he can do it from both sides of the plate. In his first 8 games in the big leagues before having to get Tommy John surgery on his opposite elbow, he hit 4 home runs in 8 games. First one was on the second pitch he ever saw in a big league game off little-known right-hander Justin Verlander. Dumped one opposite way into the Crawford boxes in Houston. Last year in 2024, he was clearly undermatched when it came to minor league pitching. It wasn't even close. He hit 314, 376 OBP, and a 504 slug. 11 bombs, 35 RBIs, but truly a 361 batting average on balls in play. And that's a really important number for me because his strikeout numbers were a little high. But at the same time, this is a guy that over time we expect to see those strikeout numbers start to come down as he gets more into professional baseball, gets to see more hitting. Really unique situation. He was signed in 2019, 2020. Season was canceled because of COVID in 2020. Came into 2021 and 22 and performed fairly well, but really had to get his feet back under him. And then got his chance in 2023, got hurt, had to work his way back into it. So I'd like to see a full season of this guy seeing true professional pitching in the state that he's been playing in as of recent. I mean, listen, they don't call him the Martian for nothing. His talent is truly out of this world. In the Futures game in 2021, he popped one out to left field. It was gone off the bat. So I'm really excited for it. I think potentially he could replace Soto production in the very near future, very realistically, especially if you in this year are looking at kind of recreating him in the aggregate with some of the other guys that they grabbed, notably Cody Bellinger. But we'll probably see Dominguez play center field. It helps push Judge back over to right field where he's actually a fairly solid defender, has a really good arm, isn't covering nearly as much ground. I think overall, it wouldn't be shocking to see him put up some absolutely gross numbers from a rookie perspective. So that's my guy.
I got to give you some heart. I got to give you a little bit of a hard time for trying to act like Judge is not a pretty good center fielder. I don't know about that, man. I mean, he shouldn't be there, but it doesn't mean he doesn't play it at least the league average ability.
No. I'm not saying he doesn't. Listen, if you are 6'7", 6'8", as big as Judge is and move as gracefully as he does, you just cover a lot of ground. And he has a cannon for a right arm. He plays more than serviceable defense no matter which piece of the outfield you put him in. I'm just saying I think he better suits right field, in my opinion.
I can't disagree with that. I think he absolutely is more of a right fielder than he is a center fielder. And I'm sure I'll get crucified on the flip side because we all know what happened in the playoffs this year. So, look, man,
listen.
I'm in the same camp with Dominguez. I think Dominguez has been a breakout potential star for a couple of different years now. I think injuries have held him back. I think the Yankees have done a really good job in reality of being patient with him. I know that nobody wants to hear that, but when you're looking at a talent like Jason Dominguez and what we've seen him do from an overall perspective, the guy's got 35-plus home run power. He's hits from both sides of the plate, which makes sure that he is always at an advantage when it comes to platoon splits. what this guy brings to the table is extremely strong. I think there are some question marks from an overall standpoint of how good he truly is, in my opinion, from a defensive standpoint, which I think has scared people a little bit with him in center field. But as we always talk about here, offense will always play a much bigger role. If you can rake, they will find a spot for you, even if it might hurt a little bit defensively. So very excited for Jason Dominguez as well.
Well, and a quick sidebar, just something to think about, because we talk about this all the time. When you look at the historicals of Dominguez and the Yankees and what maybe they could utilize with how they've treated him and the patience they have provided him, he goes out and has a really stellar year this year. Wouldn't be crazy to think that they would go try and sign him to an extension.
Totally.
Right? You know what his ceiling is. You know you could probably get out in front of it. You know that the reality of the situation with prior injury, people still look at him, but there's a whole new crop of guys that have incredible talent every year. If he has a good year and you could go lock him up, and he'd probably be more willing to do it at this point, I think there's a reality in that the Yankees also gain from being patient with him and growing with him rather than having a normal trajectory. So
you think they'll give him a sweep? All right. Sorry. I'm twisting the knife now. Let's move on.
Discount. A discount.
All right, we'll take a discount. If you're a Yankees fan, be excited, because I think this is the year Dominguez gets the opportunity and absolutely hammers baseballs at the major league level. Let's move over to a team that has already probably had enough pitching success of recent, and that's the Pittsburgh Pirates. Paul Skeens is pretty good. Jared Jones looks like an absolute stud. But what you're not being told right now is they've got another guy coming who is potentially, I'm going to say he's potentially in the Jared Jones type realm when it comes to ceiling. I'm not going to put anybody in the Paul Skeens ceiling zone. That would just be asinine of me. But there's another guy here who could potentially be fighting for multiple awards as he rolls out his career, and that's Bubba Chandler. This guy possesses a 70 grade fastball that's got great vertical ride. So again, right at the top of the zone. My best example when we talk about this type of vertical ride or holding plane will always be Brian Wu. Brian Wu. Thank you. I said Brandon. Now, this guy is not a max effort thrower. That's something that we used to talk about a lot more when you think about scouting and different things of that nature, in order to make sure we have guys who are not going to hurt themselves throwing the baseball. So seeing that this guy is not a max effort thrower and can still sit around the 96.7 mile an hour mark, which is what he averaged last year, and can reach up to 99 is huge. The pitching epidemic has just been stressful. So a guy like Chandler looks as if he is somebody who may, knock on wood, be able to stay healthy in this current era. He possesses 2+ pitches, not just a fastball. His slider is extremely good, grades out 60 or above in most scouting circles. He also has a solid changeup and a change of pace curveball in order to round out his overall arsenal. We already talked about who he's joining. Paul Skeens, Jared Jones, Mitch Keller, and oh, by the way, they've got another guy we're not even going to dive into today in Thomas Harrington, who also looks like he could be an absolute monster. This is potentially the best pitching rotation over the next 2 or 3 years that the Pirates have ever had. And listen, they've had some good arms, but this rotation looks ridiculous. Diving into the numbers for Bubba Chandler, he was really, really solid last year at the minor league level. Across 2 levels, which was AA and AAA, he had a 3.08 ERA, a 1.02 whip with 148 Ks, over 23 starts in 119 innings. To boot, when Chandler got the opportunity to play ball at the AAA level, he was immaculate. A 1.83 ERA and 54 strikeouts and only 39.1 innings pitched. That's dominating at a level that carries a lot of guys who have seen major league pitching. Love it. To boot, Chandler possesses something that we really love on this podcast, and that's the ability to keep the baseball on the ground. Throughout his 3 minor league seasons, he's had a ground ball rate of 40.9% or higher. In one of his stops, he had a 62% ground ball rate as a starter. That is unheard of in many, many circles, and it tells you the type of stuff he possesses and how good that slider potentially is. I do expect Chandler to make the opening day roster. or be giving all the opportunity in the world to make the opening day roster. We all know service time manipulation, whether we like it or not, is still a thing. However, this gives the Pirates the opportunity to continue to bring in draft picks if a guy like Chandler can go out and win Rookie of the Year, which is why I suspect they're going to give him an opportunity to do that, because we both know in a small market team, it's extremely, extremely important that whenever you can grab more draft capital, since you're not going to go out and pay a big free agent, you take that draft capital and you rely on your player development group to really make something happen. So love Bubba Chandler. Think he's an excellent, excellent overall ball player, and I'm really excited to see him pitch in 2025.
Yeah, I think it would not be shocking to see a very similar trajectory to what you saw from Skeens last year, as far as made 28 starts, still won a postseason award, right? So he's still fully capable of having that success and not starting the season on the big league club, like being able to work his way into it and still, as much as we don't want it to happen, manipulate his service time a little bit. I would not be shocked to see that,
Totally
the
agree.
reality of the situation.
Yeah, and a team like the Pirates is always going to pay attention to that. I look at the Cleveland Guardians as a really good example, right? Their version of service time manipulation is utilizing guys as options, okay? So that is affecting the MLB service time, but it's also allowing them to continue to showcase these younger guys, which puts them in a spot when they do need to make a trade or something happens in the deadline. Other teams have gotten to see some type of cup of tea at the major league level for these prospects. So I totally agree. Chandler may not be up for the first 3 or 4 weeks of the year. I do believe that once he makes that first start, there's a high likelihood everybody in baseball who is paying attention is not going to question why he's there, and I expect him to stick once he gets there. So love Bubba Chandler, really high on my list. Can't wait to see that fastball at the top of the zone. Flex, who is your other rookie to discuss?
My other rookie comes out of the New York Mets and Brandon Sproat. I was watching so much video on this guy, and I got lost in it, quite honestly. It is such an electric fastball with ride that he then works a sinker and a slider off of. The length at which all three of those pitches stay within the same general tunnel of one another, going either what seems to a hitter up with really, really good ride, or right and left with that sinker and slider working off of each other. There's not a shock that he has a really solid walk to K ratio. He's got a really, really low whip, and he's got an ability to get out of situations when he gives up hits. The majority of his 2023 was spent in high A AAA ball, or high A AA ball, and then he spent a little bit of time in AAA where he faltered. And my guess is that it was towards the end of the season, arm was a little bit dead, arm was a little tired, getting to a point of first season in professional baseball. But I would be shocked if we didn't see him have a chance to make a name for himself to the casual baseball fan in spring training this year. I think the Mets are really high on this guy. And when you look at it with broad spectrum to the Mets and the situation that they're in, I like to think of the Mets as being at the beginning of their window. And it's really hard to look at a team that just made the NLCS as being at the beginning of their window. But you have your veterans on high contracts that are absolute stars. You have your really young prospects that you're hoping to get something from, a Vientos, a Beatty, and you've got the guys right behind them that are supposed to take you to the promised land. And in the next couple of years, I think on top of the Juan Soto signing, which is very clearly the big ticket item, you're going to see a couple more guys get signed. The free agent market on starting pitching next year is far better than it was this year. That's why I don't think the Mets were in on it. It really wasn't time. But you get a couple guys on 2 to 3 year deals. You work them to be your 3, 4, 5. You potentially get Sproat to come up and be your 2, and you go buy a number 1. And I think that's what they're really grooming this guy to be, and where they're really looking for him to end up. Our guy TJ Stats put together a really nice minor league savant card. And what I noticed from that, and what he does very well, is he stays in the zone but stays off the barrel. And that's really important because it means you can go deeper into ball games as a starter. You can command the fastball. You can work around the edges of the strike zone. You don't feel a need to be in the middle of it, which means you can stay, again, off the barrel, soft contact, let your defenders make plays, and all the while still being able to get strikeouts when you need them with a wipeout slider. So I'm excited to see what he brings to the table, especially in spring training. I'm excited for his trajectory. He's a college guy, went to Florida, was dominant there. So I don't see it being a very long while until we end up seeing him in the big leagues throwing a lot of games against the NL East. So that's my guy, Brandon Sproat. I'm excited about his 2025. I think he's going to get his shot. I'm hoping he takes advantage of it, and I think a lot of Mets fans feel the same. So who do you have as your second guy?
Real quick before we roll to mine, I totally agree on Sproat. I think one of the things that I want to emphasize too is they've done a really, really good job with Sproat. When you look at his arsenal, the fastball, sinker, slider, and a guy who can control all three of those pitches to make sure that that tunneling is as good as humanly possible, that's killer for a hitter. You physically do not know what direction the ball is going to go when he's able to locate and throw him out of the same spot like that. I think that's a big piece of why you're seeing something within TJ Stats' minor league type savant card for him of his ability to keep the ball off the barrel. When you have to make a decision that late as a hitter, simply for the fact that everything looks exactly the same, that is so difficult to do anything with. And I also think that's part of the ceiling piece with Sproat, which is what you were getting into of him looking to be one of those top two starters for the Mets at some point in time in the near future. As a Nats fan, really, really not excited to see another elite Mets prospect hit the top of the books, but very excited to see what this guy does as a baseball fan regardless, because I think his stuff is absolutely excellent.
I mean, this isn't new for the Mets developmental staff from a young arm perspective. Like, this is a group that has churned out arms that have ended up moving on to other places and continued to be successful down the line. So, as long as he stays healthy, I think I'm excited to see what he's going to bring to 2025.
Totally agree. Looking forward to seeing him. I think we both expect him to be not on the opening day roster, but he'll probably be somewhere middle of the season, get his cup of tea this year, and then really show out, in my opinion, at the major league level when he does get the opportunity. Let's move on to my second one as what you were alluding to, and I'm going to go with the son of a former big leaguer and a guy who is out there with the Athletics. Maybe somebody you guys didn't see last year in his small cup of tea at the big league level, and that's Jacob Wilson, son of former big leaguer Jack Wilson. Jacob Wilson is a shortstop by trade, and this dude at the minor league level, when it comes to his bat, made just about everybody in the minors look like an absolute joke. Okay, what allows me to say that? Well, let me tell you what he did over 3 levels and 208 total ABs. He slashed 433, 473, and 668 for a 1.141 OPS, 28 doubles in those 208 at-bats, a 504 WOBA, and hold on, everybody's newest favorite stat to reference, it's not really always ours, but this will resonate with everybody, a 200 WRC+. Kind of good is this Jacob Wilson guy. And what I love about him so much is he doesn't necessarily fit the mold of what everybody's chasing at the major league level right now, which is power over the fence more than anything, right? All we do is talk about launch angle and the ability to barrel a ball. Again, there's guys who do other things, and Wilson is one of those. I want to give a little bit of an excerpt here. It's very short from his MLB.com scouting report. His ability to make contact is almost freakish. All right. Well, there's only one other guy in the MLB that we would ever say that about right now, and that's probably Luis Ariz. So that tells you what Jacob Wilson could do. Now, the catch is Wilson hit 7 home runs at the minor league level last year, and again, 28 doubles. There is a lot more than what Ariz is doing from slapping the ball around and making contact. Wilson is a legitimate top-of-the-order bat who absolutely rakes. The only thing he doesn't do as well as his dad is his dad was a very elite defensive player. Wilson can definitely stay at shortstop. He definitely will play it at a league average type level. If they ever had to move him to second base, I think he could play that at an even higher level. As most people know, that move is easier for most middle infielders. But guy who can play up the middle, destroyed minor league pitching. I am so excited for a full season of one Jacob Wilson.
Baseball's a sport where you do see this a lot. You see like children of former major league players get to the big leagues. And I think it's for two reasons. I think the access to opportunities, visibility helps, but understanding how to be comfortable in a big league setting is really important. Understanding how to not be uncomfortable under the bright lights. They always say to minor leaguers when they get called up, first thing they say don't do is don't look up. There's no minor league ballpark that's got a second and third level like a Major League Baseball stadium has. So you want to get freaked out? Look up and see 3 levels of stands and an extra 25, 30,000 people. And I think there's such an advantage to getting to grow up around that a guy like Jacob Wilson is going to have, that is going to make him so comfortable and be able to grow so quickly at the major league level. That's unique to him compared to a lot of different guys. And you see it across baseball still even today, right? I mean, Bo Bichette, Vlad Guerrero Jr., these are guys that grew up around baseball stadiums, around the baseball field. They know how to be in that kind of brotherhood before they even get there. Have you seen Jack Wilson's backyard?
I've seen one video of it. One video.
I don't know how you couldn't become an incredible defender. It's quite literally like an entire baseball infield where Jacob Wilson could just go practice with his dad becoming a better defender.
It also helps when your dad
expectation is that
can do
he's
it.
going to get better, right? Like, we can almost assume that is going to happen defensively.
Yeah, guys, this is a prospect that is worth watching. Oakland's prospects of late have fallen on deaf ears a lot because of, and again, they're not even Oakland. I'm sorry. I've got to get out of the habit at this point. But the Athletics prospects truly have fallen under the radar. Lawrence Butler was unbelievable last year, and not a single person on the planet was talking about him. Again, obviously not a totally true statement, but that's what it felt like. And he came up and absolutely raked. And I think Wilson's going to do the same thing. I think he's going to take the league by storm this year.
Well, I think it was MLB put out a tweet that was like, is this the year we see a Lawrence Butler breakout? And Brent Rooker tweeted at it, was like, was last year not enough?
20 home runs in basically the second half wasn't good enough for anybody?
Yeah, exactly. I've said this probably the last month and a half, especially to you. I am excited about the 2025 Athletics. Truly excited about this team. They had really good vibes the back half of last year. They were the only team over 500 that was not a playoff team after the All-Star break last year.
Playing in Sacramento too. Playing in Sacramento. I agree. They're going to be maybe not must-watch television, but they're going to be a team where I think they start playing well and people are going to tune in to kind of watch what happens. I want to leave this final note here on Jacob Wilson for everybody. The way I would describe him after watching videos and having the opportunity to see him play a little bit last year at the MLB level in a couple of MILB games, this guy has a short, compact swing that is just built to spray line drives around the field. There is nothing flashy about this swing, but the dude barrels balls up and can go gap to gap at an unbelievably strong rate. So, Athletics fans, get excited about this guy. I think you potentially have one of your middle infielders or somebody who could play up the middle of the field for at least to the end of his rookie deal. Let's hope. So we'll see what happens. But let's move on here from those rookies that we really like. And I really like this next segment, another Evan Flex brainchild. So Flex, why don't you go ahead and introduce this?
Yeah, I like this one. We're calling it the greatest single season you've never heard of. Doesn't have to be a Hall of Famer. Doesn't have to be anything of note towards the result of the season. Just a ridiculous season that you've truly never heard of and didn't know existed, whether it be the person or whether you truly recognize how good that season was. So I'll kick it off. A guy that probably a lot of people have never heard of. He was caught in the mix of the late steroid era, early steroid era in the middle of his career.
Evan's favorite time of MLB baseball.
He got overshadowed, but 1996 season for Andres Galarraga when he was playing for the Rockies.
Dog.
He slashed 304, 357, 601. Okay, slugged 601, 47 home runs, 150 RBIs, and 39 doubles. 150 RBIs. He had a 19-year career. Having a 19-year career in the MLB is already an incredible feat. Doing that on its own, but having a season at an age 35 like this is absurd. Again, played in Colorado, towards the back end of the steroid era. He was like slightly falling off prior to this season. I'm not going to say it was steroid aided. I'm not going to make any sort of accusation. Do for that what you will. 47 home runs, 150 RBIs. And I would say it's one of the better seasons that people have never heard of. So that's
I would have to
mine.
agree.
Ryan, what do you got for us?
All right, I really like mine. I was excited for this one. And we'll have a suggestion of a documentary you should go watch after this. How about 1968? Let's go far enough back to where I wasn't even a thought. You weren't even a thought. And yeah, we didn't get to watch this season, but gosh, I wish I had had the opportunity to watch this season. And that is the 1968 season with the St. Louis Cardinals for Bob Gibson. All right, I'm going to read these off, and you can believe me if you want to, or you can just check all the stat websites, but it's going to confirm what I'm saying. Bob Gibson had a 1.12 ERA, a 2.58 ERA plus, a 1.77 FIP, and a WHIP of, wait for it, 0.853. He led the entire MLB with 268 Ks, and he won the Cy Young and MVP award. Now, you would think that's where this all ends, but baseball's a little different than it used to be, and Bob was an animal, and here's why. Bob Gibson had 28 complete games and 13 shutouts in 34 starts. He averaged 8.95 innings per start with an 11.2 WAR in that single season. He didn't stop during the regular season. This all culminated with one of the most dominating playoff performances of all time, in which he started 3 games. He threw 3 complete games with a 1.67 ERA and 35 strikeouts and only 27 innings. Bob Gibson, you friggin' dog. Those are some dumbfounding numbers. Yeah, Flags, what do you think of those numbers?
Well, I think two of the crazier stats are, do you know how many innings he threw that year?
304.
304. We're lucky if we get 1 to 5 200 inning guys a year.
Dude, 28 complete games. 28 complete games.
304. Do you want to know what's even worse? He lost 9 times. How? How did he lose 9 games?
Hey, man.
I mean, it had to have been a combined, like, 12 runs given up in those 9 games.
Oh, it had to be.
And they just didn't score any runs. Has to.
Unbelievable season. And if you'd like to know a little bit more about this season and some of the hardest throwers in all of baseball, there's a documentary on Peacock called Fastball. We highly, highly recommend you guys watch it. I forced Flax to watch it, and he's thanked me ever since. So, Bob Gibson, 1968. Take a look yourself. There's a lot of black ink on that page from that season for him. Just unbelievable. All right. Moving right along here, back to a segment you guys know from last week, and that's buying or inviting. Which teams are already inviting people to spring training and, in our opinion, are just rounding out their roster with minor league deals and, again, maybe 1 or 2 major league guys left? Or are we still buying and looking for that big splash? Flax, who you got this week for inviting?
For inviting, I got the Kansas City Royals. I think the Kansas City Royals are ready to just hop into spring training. They're ready to go. Vinny Pasquantino is going to be healthy, ready to go. Bobby Witt Jr. Between the two of them, Freddie Fermin learning from Salvador Perez. There's so much going on that they are so excited about. They've got Jack Caglione coming to spring training, going to get him starting incorporated with the younger guys. I think from a starter's perspective, would you love to have seen them go get one more guy? Sure. I don't love that they moved away one of their potential starting arms, but for the top three between Reagans, Lugo, and Waka, I think it carries a pretty large load. The bullpen, they added Lorenzen. He can swing both ways. He could start, he can relieve. I really like what this team has. And then Lucas Erceg, ready and set to close down games, be a really high leverage arm for them. But above all else, they're in a very gettable division. Between them, Detroit, Cleveland, Minnesota, and Chicago, a division that consistently beats up on itself and tends to leave open an opportunity for a wild card spot or even potentially winning the division. I think the Royals are in a great shape for it. Bobby Witt Jr. is the best five-tool player I think that exists in baseball at this moment, considering the level of defense that he plays on top of his offensive abilities. So overall, I look at this team. I think they added a little bit of depth in the infield. They're who I look at as one of the inviting teams ready to get into spring training if it started today.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think the Royals are a bigger threat than many people probably realize. I think they started to really pick it up last year. Bobby Witt has really shined a light on that team. But people are going to talk, they're going to say Witt. Reagans and Lugo were absolute dogs last year, both high in the Cy Young Award voting. Cole Reagans, I cannot wait to see what he comes out with in 2025, as I just expect him to continue to get better. So totally agree with you that the Royals are probably rounded out for the most part, maybe a bullpen arm here or there to see who can make the roster, get a little bit more depth. But I'd agree. I think they're inviting. Let's pop over to mine here. You know, I don't know that this one's going to make people super happy, but I do think they're at this portion of their offseason. And I think the Milwaukee Brewers are at the point where they're just inviting guys to camp, and the moves that they're going to make are going to be relatively minor. Moving away from Devin Williams and getting in return a Caleb Durbin, who can be a fourth infielder with good upside, a guy we know you really love. Nestor Cortez, I get it. He wasn't insanely good those last 2 years that he was with the Yankees, but he provides a really, really good innings-eating type arm. And I have a feeling, too, Cortez may thrive a little bit more outside of the Bronx, whether people realize it or not. He did a really, really good job of handling himself while he was in the Bronx. However, a lot less relaxed in Milwaukee. And guess what? Again, he's their 4 or 5. They're not going to ask him to be that 2 or 3 that the Yankees really did ask him to be for a few years there with the way the rotation was performing and Rodon underperforming at that point in time. So I think Milwaukee's inviting. I think there's a lot of Brewers fans who probably would like them to have made a little bit more of a splash here in the offseason with the trajectory of their team. I also think on the backside here, before I finish up, is that they're banking on quite a few young guys really playing at a high level. And I think the big one that I want to throw out there to everybody is Garrett Mitchell. Milwaukee Brewers fans, you guys have been waiting for this dude to break out for 3 years now. And I don't say that in a poor way. Garrett Mitchell's been hampered by injuries, but you've got a guy who can play a legit center field and can play either any of the 3 outfield positions at a high level. A solid left-handed bat who shows power with a really pure left-handed swing. I'm not going to sit here and say that Mitchell is on my, I know this guy's going to break out type list, but I do believe that the front office is banking on this being Garrett Mitchell's healthy year, and all of a sudden you see him become a middle-of-the-order type bat for them. We'll see what happens. However, that's where I'm at. I think the Milwaukee Brewers are starting to invite guys to spring training, and I think they feel their roster is pretty rounded out.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, Garrett Mitchell's shown in his short opportunities that he can handle the moment. It's very clear that he has the capability, he has the talent. Like you said, a year where he is free of injury, has the opportunity to just really go out and be himself and be a guy for them. I think he'll shine. He's just got to get to that place. And one quick note on Nestor Cortez. Nestor Cortez is in his walk year, right? So he's got a little bit of added pressure to show something, and having that year not be in the Bronx, in a place where he gets to be a number 4, number 5, is best case scenario for a team like the Brewers. There is a good reality where he comes out and he's the Nestor Cortez he was 2 years ago before he ran into some injuries. And that would be a really, really great story for the Brewers and help with a lot of the bulk of the workload that starting staff's going to see.
As we talk about the Brewers here too, if you don't mind here, the big thing, like I said, is there's a lot of young talent that they're really looking at to excel this year to help them. Cheerio continuing, Mitchell to break out, Terang to continue to be better. I do want a 1-minute excerpt from you on a guy who's a former Oriole and Joey Ortiz. I know you can give that to us without looking. I think he's a great player, but go ahead. Let's tell the audience a little bit more about Ortiz and the skill set that he has.
Yeah, I mean, Joey Ortiz is going to be their starting shortstop this year. Joey Ortiz was stuck behind 3 potential shortstops in Baltimore. This was best case scenario for him. He got a full year of playing next to a guy like Willy Adames, where he really learned how to play at the big league level. He truly has the defensive capabilities to be a star infielder. He's got pop, but he's going to be a star defensively, and he's just going to work the ball all over the field. He takes incredibly good at bats. It was something that the Orioles really liked about him, and what they've always liked about a lot of their young guys is they take really professional at bats. They have no problem taking walks, but they take advantage when you give them opportunities to go after the baseball. Joey Ortiz is going to be a star this year, and you're going to see a lot more about him, especially since he's going to have to. But I was hoping you were going to bring him up because he's got to step into that role. They need a guy who's going to be an everyday shortstop, and I think he's got the capability.
Yeah, and I think Ortiz with the bat too, his floor probably relatively low with the bat, but I also think he has 15 home run, 25-30 double potential, no problem at all within that stick, which is huge for the Brewers. If you're getting that out of an elite defensive shortstop, that's electric. So don't want to harp
hit the
too
ball
much
out both ways.
Oh, 100%.
Like he can hit the ball out opposite field, and that's a ballpark where it's relatively easy to do if you pop one as a right-hander. I mean, we saw Pete do it off Devin Williams last year in the playoffs. There's a lot of ballparks that ball does not go out, but there's a spot down in dead right field where the wall comes in, and I think you could see Joey Ortiz take advantage of that a couple times here and there.
Wouldn't surprise me at all. Well, let's move on from the Brewers here. Excited to see the season that they have. I was really low on them last year, so I was wrong. They had a great year last year, and I think they're going to have a much better season than I thought they were going to last year. I'll admit it. Moving on, though.
Big of you.
I do my best. Like I always tell you guys, I won't lie to you. I'll be honest. I'm going to start our buying segment here, and I'm going to go to one that I'm excited to talk about because everybody's going to be like, are you sure they're doing anything? And the answer is absolutely. I know you do. And that's the Chicago White Sox. Yes, they were unfortunately by record the worst team in Major League Baseball last year. However, we've continually on this podcast talked about how we believe Getz is doing such a great job as their GM of really resetting that organization, making good moves, bringing in good talent, not being afraid to move guys who do not fit their current window. Why do I think that they're still buying? Well, that's really simple for me. They're going to look at any guy who at some point in time in their career had good potential, they like their metrics, they like either their swing, their pitch arsenal, whatever it may be. And if they can get these guys on close to a league minimum contract or under that $5 million range, they're probably on the radar. I definitely don't believe that the White Sox are sitting around saying, oh, we're here to lose as many games as we did last year because we need the picks and we're going to risk it in the lottery. They definitely want to make strides this year. And I believe that, again, they're still going to buy. So let's talk about some afterthought, quote unquote, afterthought guys that I think that they might go after to finish out and really bolster that overall roster. None of these guys are going to blow you away when I say their names, but I think they're all reasonable options for the Chicago White Sox to try to, again, compete at some level in 2025. Spencer Turnbull, who I do believe at one point in time was a Chicago White Sox, so he does have a relationship with the franchise. I could see him in their rotation. Austin Voth, former National, former Orioles, so both Flax and I are very, very familiar with him. I could see him getting an opportunity as a swingman for them. Again, keep in mind, in this age of baseball, swingmen are extremely important. You need innings eaters. Voth could bring that to that type of team. The final two arms that I have on this list are both relievers. One in Lucas Sims, who has had some ups and downs, but is a really good right-handed arm. And then, of course, every bullpen's going to need some lefties. Ryan Borucki, again, up and down, has moved a lot. Everybody always wants this guy at some point in time. He is an interesting case because every time he is dropped, he finds his way on somebody's roster extremely quickly. The main reason is because lefties who make the major leagues are normally pretty good pitchers. That's a whole nother topic we can get into one day.
I was gonna say it's because he's a left-handed pitcher.
Yeah, it helps a lot, guys. Being a lefty is really important. There are a lot of not very good right-handed pitchers in Major League Baseball due to the fact that they get an enhanced statistical value on platoon splits. Again, not going to dive into that right now because that will be a tangent for me. Let's go into some of the position players that I think there is an opportunity for the White Sox to go out and get. I'm going to make a statement before I say this. I'm really not concerned about what position the White Sox need. If there's a guy who they think could potentially break out, the White Sox need to go 1 for 10 and they've won. All right? The veteran that I think they probably could potentially go after, there's 2 of them. Brandon Drury, he's a utility guy. He can play most infield positions outside of shortstop at this point in his career and can play corner outfield spots. I think he'd fit really well. I think he'd bring some minor level excitement to the actual organization. I would love to see them give Brendan Rodgers an opportunity. People forget, former first-round pick. He's still only 27 years old. I believe that they would give him starting opportunities and at-bats and plate appearances in Chicago, so I like that fit a lot. The 2 outfielders that I think could potentially fit them well and they could get on low-dollar deals, one being Connor Joe, big fan of him on this podcast, really like what he brings to the table. I think a guy like Connor Joe's veteran presence could really help a young Chicago White Sox team. And then former top prospect in Dylan Carlson. Carlson's really simple, guys. He is one of the best athletes in all of baseball. I understand he hasn't performed with the bat really ever in his career or with any level of consistency, but he is a switch hitter with stupid athleticism. That's the type of guy, from a ceiling perspective, that the White Sox would love to grab, find a way to use their player development group to really help him flourish, and all of a sudden, you're looking at a guy you either move at the deadline if it was a 1-year deal and get more prospects, or you potentially say, hey man, we were really, really excited about what you did for us and our franchise. Thank you so much. We want to give you an opportunity here on a 3 or 4 year deal for the rest of what is probably his career. I believe he's also 27 or 28 years old at this point as well. So, again, final thoughts on the White Sox here. It's super simple. Guys who are willing to look at lower dollar contracts to give themselves an opportunity at innings or plate appearances at the major league level. The White Sox, again, truly need to go 1 out of 10 on these guys because we all know next year there's a very, very high likelihood that they're not competing. So wherever they can find a hit, it's really big as Getz and his crew continue to retool the White Sox.
I love that Brendan Rodgers pick. I mean, quite honestly, we're not that far off. His 2024 is not that far off from his 2022. He got hurt in 2023, only played 46 games, but I mean, last year in 135 games, he slashed 267, 314, 407. Played very solid defense. I don't really know what else as an organization you're looking for if you're looking for someone who's semi-young and a stable piece for your infield, for your order. Finding a guy who will hit 261 over a full season is not like the easiest to come by for teams that are not within the top third of baseball. I love that pick. I don't think it's going to come at a high price point, and I think would be a worthwhile grab for them.
Yeah, totally agree. Really excited for the fact that the White Sox seem to be taking the correct strides. Obviously, we have some ties to the White Sox here on this podcast, so it's not meant to be biased towards that, but we've seen this franchise really, really struggle with consistency over the recent years. So either way, we'll pop off the White Sox. Flax, who is still buying?
I think the Orioles are still buying. Yeah,
oh boy.
I think Burns is gone. Santander is gone. Additions have been made, right? You get a backup catcher in Gary Sanchez, which is an interesting choice. Would probably prefer a defensive secondary catcher than an offensive secondary catcher, especially when your primary catcher is supposed to be pretty heavily offensive as well. Tyler O'Neill, my guess is the combination of Tyler O'Neill and more consistent at-bats for Heston Kjerstad should, in the aggregate, make up for losing Anthony Santander. I think the roster is still plenty good, right? Like when you look at the starting 5 of the rotation, you're in a fairly fine spot, right? Between Eflin, Grayson Rodriguez, Dean Kramer, guys that are going to end up coming off the IL, Sugano. I like what it's looking for at the moment, but to me that says that Grayson is your number 1, and until we see a 185 plus inning season without injuries from him, I'm still considering him a number 2 and Zach Eflin a number 3. Right? You still have a project in Trevor Rogers who could become something, try and get back to the guy he was. I like to think that the Orioles pitching lab has a good opportunity to do that. But in all actuality, I think there's probably still room for another bat, and I think there's still room for a number one starter. I think Luis Castillo is a really good option for that. I think they need a good right-handed hitting first baseman. Ryan Mountcastle is pretty proven. I could very easily see Mountcastle and maybe a young arm going over to Seattle with Luis Castillo coming over and the Orioles taking on the bulk of the next 4 years of that contract. It's a nice way for the Mariners to get some money off of their books, but also take on a low-cost hitter who has kind of struggled power perspective the last 2 or 3 years, but is still going to bring more power to the table than the Mariners have gotten in recent years. So I still look at the Orioles as buying. They don't have a long shopping list, but I think there's a couple things left for them still to get to where they truly want the roster to be. In all likelihood, they may not make any more moves. They may get to spring training, see what they've got, hopefully put together a 26-man roster that's going to get them to the trade deadline in a good buying position, add a couple pieces, and push through the playoffs from there. So that's who I've got on the list. Very short, very quick. But I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on the Orioles?
I think the Orioles are in a great position regardless. I think they're one of the teams that are positioned overall the best in baseball. Their minor league farm system is still extremely deep. There's more guys to come, and I know that people think that might sound crazy, but it's the truth. Kudos to Elias and crew for building what they've built so far. Now the real question is, can we get over the hump in that scenario as the Orioles? I agree that Luis Castillo makes a lot of sense. It also, kind of like you're stating, wouldn't surprise me if the Orioles said, we're okay with what we currently have, and then you see them at the deadline go out and get one of the top guys who's available to make that playoff push. So we'll see. They're loaded at the minor league level, so they can do a lot. But I like where your Orioles are currently sitting. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, look, thank you so much for spending your Tuesday morning or whatever you're listening with us. As always, Flax, any final thoughts this week?
Final thoughts. We need to open up a ballot on the Hall of Fame for a potential steroid era class. I think we have already classified the steroid era as being a thing. I think people understand the differentiation between potential markings to get guys into an elite class of player during that era versus just a guy who was doing what everyone else was doing. And I think we need to make a name for it.
Past that, we hope everybody has a great week as always. This is Baseball Unstitched. We'll see you next week.